Hello, and welcome to another episode of the M42 Adventure Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Rick Trimmer. This is episode number 4, and it's a good one. We are going to be talking with Bryce Jones today, who is, for all intents and purposes, an extreme athlete. What he does is absolutely extreme. We're going to talk about how he grew up here in Utah poor and how that, laid the perfect foundation for who he is today. The importance of education in any form, entrepreneurship and then the pitfalls and rewards, and how to commit, but always have an exit strategy. Don't listen to the noise, and how he got into running triathlons, Ironmans, all the things that he does, which is absolutely fascinating. He's an amazing individual. It was an honor to sit down with him. I'm excited for you guys to listen to this episode and jump into it. So here we go. Yeah, man. So thanks for coming down.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, good to have you. I appreciate making the drive over. All my podcasts have been in the studio, so that actually makes it a lot easier. You haven't done the Zoom podcast yet, so that's the next step.
Well, this is a nice place. I like the way you set it up here.
Yeah, it's fun. I told them if I'm coming back, I want to make it somewhere I want to come to work every day, something cool. So yeah, basically, I just want to dive into... I've learned a little bit about your story. Obviously, you grew up with Ricky. You guys have been friends a long time, right?
A few years.
Woody. So you know a lot of the crew here.
Yeah.
And when Ricky, I says, hey, man, we need to start, looking for some guests. And he's like, dude, I got the guy. And I'm like, okay, what is it? Because a lot of people have guests, and we all know somebody that's got some pretty cool stuff that they've done in their lives. And I was like, Ricky, we kind of set the benchmark, for who we're going to have on here. And then he started telling me your resume, just a little bit he knew. And I'm like, no way, this guy's not real, And so we chatted last Friday for 5 minutes, and you kind of gave me a quick rundown, and it's impressive, man. So basically, let's just jump into, you're from Hurricane, Utah. Are you from there? Kind of give me a background of where you're from and how you got started.
So born and raised in Hurricane, really small town when I was there. Obviously raised up there, but it's grown quite a bit. It's blown up with all the real estate growth here in southern Utah. But it was a small community, and I loved it. Lived right up next to the mountain, so we spent quite a bit of time running around the hills and hiking. And,
on the H?
On that same side of the mountain.
Okay.
So we just always outdoors, always doing something active. And it was nice, I guess. Growing up poor. Childhood. Yeah, growing up poor, you didn't really know that you were poor.
Absolutely.
But it was nice because we didn't have video games, we didn't have TV, we didn't have anything that we have nowadays to distract our kids.
Yep.
And so, my friends and my siblings were just running around the hills all the time.
So this started young for you. I mean, it was just something you were drawn to and just loved just naturally. And that's me too. I grew up poor here in Middleton. I was actually in Vegas for a while, and then we were able to get to St. George. I was born in Cedar City, and same thing, man, just no money.
Yeah.
But you can always get outside and, run around with your dog and climb mountains and stuff like that, catch lizards.
And you just don't realize you're poor.
Yeah.
Because that's just life.
Yeah.
And so one thing I definitely appreciate is my parents taught me to work.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the biggest thing that I could found any of the success I have is that it was always this mentality of you work first, then you play. If you want to do something, you have to finish what you have to do first. Then you get to do the things you want.
I like that. So, I had my boy up at my cabin this weekend. He actually just went on his very first ever turkey hunt.
Oh, yeah.
And we got one. We got one to come in, and he smoked it with my grandpa's, his great grandpa's shotgun that I inherited.
Okay.
And proud moment, his first ever animal. And anyway, it was raining on us the day of the hunt, so I says we'll come down and get the blind the next day once it's dried out. And he wanted to go play football down in the field. And I says, no, let's go get the work done, and then we'll come back and play. Let's go get the blind put away and he says, why? And I says, you're going to go play and then not want to do the work.
Yeah.
And so, I think those values are just so important.
Well, it made a big difference just all through life. You just recognize that, hey, I've got responsibilities. Mm-hmm. There's things I need to do. And then when I'm done doing the things that I have to do, then I can do whatever I want to do, whether it's eat, sleep, play, whatever you want to do. That comes after your responsibilities. And I think that's something my parents taught me that's just become deeply ingrained in me. And honestly, probably one of the biggest factors of any success I've had.
Yeah. So grew up in St. George.
Mm-hmm.
And then did you go to college in St. George or in Hurricane? Then did you go to college in St. George?
I graduated high school. Right afterwards, I left on an LDS mission to Japan.
Okay. Awesome.
And that was obviously pretty big of a challenge coming from a little town. When I got back from my mission, I went to college at Dixie, which is now Utah Tech. But back then it was Dixie.
That's where I went.
And honestly, I didn't really have a whole lot of ambition. For whatever reason, education wasn't really pushed in my family. And if it was, it definitely didn't rub off on me. So I didn't really think I was ever going to go to college. And I met some girl who happened to be a cheerleader. And she convinced me that I could make the cheer squad. And
awesome.
that she needed a partner. And I thought, you know what, I can do this. I can be a cheerleader if I can be your partner, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
This is a great deal.
Yeah.
And so, she was right. I made the squad. I got a scholarship, and that's how I was able to pay for school, which is nice. Again,
absolutely.
Never thinking I'd be able to afford to go to college or anything, but I did 2 years at Dixie, got my associates, went up to the University of Utah. That's where I met my wife, also cheerleading. So it worked out well for me.
A different cheerleader?
Yeah, she was.
So there was a cheerleader at Dixie, and then
cheerleader at Dixie. Yeah,
oh, that's crazy.
She got married.
Yeah.
It wasn't to me.
Yeah.
And then we went up to University of Utah and met my wife there. We dated for about a year and got married, and it was great. Right? Yeah, and I think that was really good too because we've always been active together. That was something that it hasn't been cheerleading, hasn't been working out in the gym all the time,
right?
But we've always done something active together, and that's been good for our marriage.
You married your best friend.
Yeah.
You married your
and it's been able to keep us active together to where everything we do, we look for some active component of it together that we can do. And obviously our kids are more active as a result.
Yeah. That's funny. We have very, very similar stories. Very similar. That's exactly kind of my story as well, to Dixie, to University of Utah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're at University of Utah, graduated, and then so from what I understand, from our quick conversation, you started a business
while I was at U.
Okay.
So, and I didn't graduate, just to correct you a little bit there. So
neither did I.
It was weird. I started a business while I was at the University of Utah, and it started doing well. And it was kind of one of those things I thought, you know what, I'm going to get into real estate. Because growing up, everybody I saw that around me that had quote unquote success, they had money and they had time for their family. It wasn't like hey, if you want me to come to your soccer game, what are you going to do to help pay the bills this month? Mm-hmm. It wasn't that type of negotiation. Mm-hmm. It was, hey, I'm to every game. I'm to everything that's important to you. And all those parents were in real estate. I thought, okay, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And so while I was in college, I got into real estate. And I started making some good money. And I thought, why in the world would I take off work to pay money to go to school to then go back and do the exact same thing I'm already doing? Mm-hmm. And so I dropped out. Mm-hmm. And in all honesty, I regret that decision. I went back later and got my bachelor's. But at the time, it felt like the right thing to do. And looking back, I wouldn't do the same thing again.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I did the same thing. I was at school, and my family would always say, you're raised by your parents who know what they know.
Yeah. And
so it's like, go to get a job, start working and go to school, get an education.
Yeah.
And I wanted to learn, but I never thought it had to be at school. It could be from business books. I always was reading books and listening to tapes and stuff. And so I was kind of at college because I just didn't know where to go at that time. And I didn't have anything, better to do. But I dropped out as well and started my first company. And I don't regret it. It's funny because I hear people say, you can go back and finish it and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm good. I don't know why, but I just don't have that. It's like, I feel like with my boys, I've got 3 little boys, and I tell them the same thing. Like, if you want to go to school to be a doctor or a lawyer, a dentist, You have to.
Yeah.
But I says, I would encourage you to be, entrepreneurs. And if you want to do that, you don't have to go to school and spend this fortune on education.
Exactly.
And kind of my thing, I'll just plug it a little bit here with my idea. But what I'm going to do with my boys is I've told my 12-year-old Castle, so I have him read a book every month now. Like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 4 Hour Work Week, all the classics. And then I write a 20-page test. And if he passes it, he gets $50.
Oh, nice.
He has to get 80% or better.
I'll read some books for you.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's read like, I think 17 or 18 books now. And then my ideas when he gets older is I'm going to say, listen, you can go travel the world and I'll pay for it, but I'm going to give you harder books and harder tests. And every month, if you pass that test, I'll let you go to the next city.
Okay.
And I'll let you keep traveling it for up to 2 years so that he's reading books, taking harder, obviously, more difficult tests, but also seeing the world and getting out of this little bubble.
Yeah, learning.
I think in Utah especially, we live in this kind of bubble, which I love. I love the protective bubble of Utah and the values. But at the same time, letting him get out there and see that there's, like a mission. I didn't serve an LDS mission. I was born into the religion, but I love it. I love that happens for these young boys and girls to go out there and, just giving yourself.
Yeah.
You're just serve others. And then to see the world learn a language. I mean, that is amazing.
Well, and the people skills as well.
Oh, huge.
Your communication skills.
Huge.
Skyrocket. And I think that's one of the things that helps you so much in any career is being able to relate to people and talk to people and communicate with people and genuinely care for people in a way. So whether you're running your own company or just being a good friend or a good employee, to be able to have those interpersonal skills are huge. And I think you used to learn that so much more on a mission at a younger age. Things have changed a little bit now. I think maybe people aren't coming home quite as well rehearsed in that.
Aren't they? Okay.
But it's still a really good skill set to
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so went on a mission, came home, got married, you had a company that you sold while you were at college, right?
So I sold it several years later.
Okay.
And the thing is, I started a real estate company. I started working for somebody else, and it was a good company, and they did really, really well. And at the time, they were the largest independent real estate brokerage in Utah, and so they were doing really, really well. But they started having some things that I was just frustrated by. I'm always a forward thinker, and I was thinking outside the box, and I recognized technology was a way of the future. And I went to the owner at the time and I said, hey, I've got some ideas. If you want to embrace these, it'd make this business way better for everyone, including me, as I'm working for you. And he kind of just shrugged me off and said, no, I'm not interested. You know what? We've got this. It's not broke. Don't fix it. Leave me alone. And it was bad enough that I just felt like I needed to go start my own thing.
Stifled you. Yeah, no growth.
And so I started a company, a real estate company with just me. And I hired a broker because I wasn't licensed for 3 years to be able to run it on my own.
Like intern, right?
You have to have your license for 3 years and build up so many points and take more tests and stuff.
Okay.
And I had enough points and I was definitely able to pass the test, but that 3-year requirement hadn't passed yet. And so I hired a friend of mine who was a broker, kind of retired, and I said, hey, I'll pay you a monthly fee just to have your broker's license. I want to open a company. And I opened it with just me, and then I had a roommate come on board right afterwards, and then I built it up to just hundreds of agents and offices all over the state, and we ended up being the third largest brokerage in Utah.
That's amazing.
And the whole thing I built it on was being a paperless office. And so that was the thing. At the time, it wasn't legal in Utah. The Board of Realtors didn't allow it in their paperwork and their documents.
Wow.
The state of Utah didn't allow you to hold documents paperlessly.
Interesting.
And I thought, you know what, here's a huge opportunity. And so I was kind of putting it all together behind the scenes. And then in 2007, they made it legal.
Wow.
In Utah. On like September 27th, they rewrote the real estate purchase contracts under the Board of Realtors in Utah. And the rest is history. I mean, I went from like just a handful of agents to hundreds overnight because we were the only paperless office in Utah at the time and nobody else had the software.
Yeah. See, and I wanted you to bring up that story. You told me a little bit about that last week, but, what we're going to get into, obviously this is an outdoor podcast, it's about adventure and getting outside. But this just basically, I mean, that just shows your personality. You know, that shows, you know, we're very similar. Like I said, I've started a dozen businesses, and all I've ever known is working for myself. And I don't, you know, everybody asks, like, what gives you that drive? What, you know, why do you do this instead of that? And I really can't pinpoint it. It's just me.
It's like, I'm not satisfied sitting still.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I need a challenge.
And so to hear this about your financial life, you know, which is a big aspect, like you said before, if you don't have finances, you can't travel the world. You can't take time off and go spend time with your family, hiking, you know, all the things that we love to do.
Yeah.
And so I love to hear that, you know, how you kind of connected the dots. You realized that before I can play, I've got to work.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people, you know, I have several employees here at my companies, and they'll come in and say, you know, I want to go travel the world like you did for a while.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, let's look at your finances. Let's see what you got going on. Okay, well, I think with what you have going on, you can probably do it in, you know, 4 years.
Yeah.
If you grind and you do this and this, or 8 years if you don't want to grind as much, but still. And they're like, oh, that's
hard.
That's too hard.
Yeah.
You know, I want it now. And it's like, well, that's not reality.
Yeah. That's the thing about it for me, is starting a business is hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't have the gumption and the willingness to sacrifice.
Absolutely.
You know, and kind of something I always look at is people ask me, why do you get into triathlons? Why do you do all these crazy, stupid things to your body to do Ironman races and ultra marathons or whatever else you're doing? Mm-hmm. And I say, you know what? Because I like to see what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
But also I think there's the biggest part about it, and this is what it really boils down to for me, is your body's not trained. I don't care how much you train. Your body's not made and built to race for 10 hours straight.
No.
Or however many hours it is to do some of these longer races if you're going to do some. And even if you're fast, an Ironman's 10 hours. Mm-hmm. I mean, the pros are doing an 8-9, great. But most amateur athletes are 10 to 15.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so if you're going to be racing that long, I don't care how much you train. At some point in time, your body's going to say, enough, stop. Yeah. You're going to hit the wall.
Yeah.
And that'll happen for almost everybody, maybe even just doing a marathon.
Right.
But every endurance race I've ever done, you get to a certain point in that and your body's just like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's when it becomes a mental game.
Yeah.
And for me, the real power is the more you push yourself to that limit over and over and over as you're training for those races. And then in the races themselves, when it really matters and it feels like everything's on the line for your goal and you overcome that.
Yeah.
I think that translates into other aspects of your life, whether it's your marriage, your work, your job, your church, whatever it is. When you learn to push yourself beyond the point where other people give up, that's where you find the growth. Mm-hmm. And that's where you distinguish yourself from everybody else that gives up.
Yeah.
And most people aren't willing to do that.
Yeah.
Whether it's a marathon, you see people, the first 15 miles of a marathon, you don't see many people walking. Mm-hmm. Everybody's running. Mm-hmm. But the last 3 or 4 miles, you see a ton of people walking. And it's because it's hard. That's when you kind of separate the wheat from the tare, so to speak.
That's a really good point. So, because like you said, you know, this guy might make it 5 miles running, and then he hits that wall you're talking about, that mental aspect, and they might stop.
And they'll still
somebody
finish.
else will go 7. Yeah.
They'll still finish, and they might set a PR, and they're really happy with themselves. And I'm not discounting that.
Right. Absolutely.
I've walked the last half of some marathons and stuff,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that. But the point is if you push yourself to the limit, and you're willing to do that over and over and over again, you learn what it's like to really be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then when business is hard and it's 3 a.m. and you're tired and you want to go to bed, but you know you need to get this thing done.
Yeah. You know you have it.
You can go to bed and be average like everybody else.
Yeah.
Or you can consistently stay up and get it done.
Yeah.
And when you stay up and get it done, that's that grind you're talking about. Then you can say, okay, now I can go play.
One of my favorite quotes is that I tell everybody is live today like no one else will. So tomorrow you can live like no one else can.
Yeah, that's almost identical.
Is it?
Yeah, so when I started a business, I was starting a software company, kind of piggybacking on my real estate brokerage. And I was working just crazy hours, running the real estate company, had a mortgage company at the same time, and the little temp agency. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to start this software company to really blow this up. And And it was ridiculous hours coordinating with programmers and throwing 12, 15 grand a month out the window for a few years on this thing to get it off the ground. And just the hours were always in the middle of the night. And in my office, I had intentionally all blank walls except one picture. And it was an 8x10 picture. I think I printed it off on my computer. It was nothing special, but it had a picture of a nice house and a BMW in front. And above it, it said, I'd rather live a few years of my life like most people won't in order to live the rest of my life like most people can't.
100%.
And I would sit back there at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, 5 a.m, whatever time I was still working from the day before, just when I'm ready to give up. And I'd sit back and I'd go, oh, I can't do this anymore. And that was the only thing I could look at.
Yeah.
And when I'd see that, I'd say, all right, this is why I'm doing this. Yeah. And the funny thing is you see those people, you brought this up earlier, these people come to you when you've already been there, right?
They want the result.
They want the result. They don't want to do the work. Mm-hmm. They love seeing, oh, wow, you did whatever this race is. Oh, that's so incredible. I want to do that someday. Mm-hmm. Or, oh, that's so cool. You traveled the world for all these months or years. Oh, you got these things that I've always wanted. You're like, okay, where were you before when I was doing the stuff it took to get this? Yeah. And are you willing to do the stuff I did to get what I have? Or are you willing to do the stuff you need to do to get what you want?
Absolutely.
And most of the time, they're not.
They're not.
They're the guys who are 18 miles in on a marathon, and they're walking because they're like, oh, I can't do this. This is too hard.
Yeah. And that's 100%. Different. Ricky knows my story. There was I lost everything in the recession, in the construction recession. And when I started digging back out, I went and I was running my original company, United Wood Products, which couldn't pay me just because I would have killed it.
Yeah.
And so I had that job, and then I had a side job with my dad's company, construction company. And so I had to clock into both. I had partners on them. And so I worked an average of 84 hours a week for 3 years. I didn't have a day off. My longest stretch of it without a day off was like 2.5 years.
Wow.
And I would call my wife on Christmas, Eve, Christmas Day. And we had one little boy and then two, another one followed up. And I would call my mom, my wife and my dad. And like you said, I'm out there, grinding, in a wood shop. And I'd call my wife crying. And I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm missing this or missing that. And she'd say, we know what you're doing it for. You're on the right path. And then I'd call my dad and I'm like, am I making a mistake? I had some brothers who actually called me and they're like, you're missing like some integral parts of your kids' lives and stuff. And I'd call my dad and say, is my brother right? And he says, if I saw you taking the money and just wasting it, I would say, absolutely. Go home and, sit there with your family on Christmas Eve. But I was buying real estate. I ended up buying, almost a dozen rental properties here in St. George. And I paid them all off because I was afraid of debt. Just got, burned. But like I said, I was doing things that there was nobody else in the shop on Christmas Eve. There was nobody else in the shop on, 4th of July.
Yep.
For years. Not for a week, not for one Christmas, for 2.5, 3 Christmas, 2.5 years. And then, like you said, they walk in and they're like, oh, we want to go,
I want to go play.
I want to go play. And I'm like, okay, I can.
It's that employee mentality.
It's just like you with your, if I said, hey, I want to go run a marathon. You'd say, well, Rick, you got a few extra pounds. You got to get, whatever you got,
Yeah, you gotta put in the work.
Yeah, you'd write down a plan. And I'd be like, oh, man, I can't just run a marathon tomorrow?
Well, you probably could.
Maybe.
It just wouldn't be pretty, right?
Yeah. Ricky's pointing to me. I have a buddy who ran a marathon. He was taking one of my friends to the St. George Marathon the next morning. And my buddy says, hey, what is this? What's going on? And my friend just needed a ride, Dave B.
Okay.
Do you know Dave B here in town?
I don't.
And he says, I need a ride, Cody. And Cody says, I'll give you a ride. What's going on? And Cody's just kind of a free thinker. We love him. We know who he is. But he says, well, I might want to run that. And,
wow.
And Dave's like, okay, well, we'll get you trained. We'll plan on it for next year. And he's like, I want to run tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And Dave's like, I don't think that's safe. And he's like, I just want to try it. So they make a number plate. They made like a fake because you have to sign up and register.
Yeah.
They hit him in the trunk of a car. Drove up to Central?
Yeah.
Is that where that one starts?
Yeah, it starts in Central.
And he gets out. never had ran or jogged.
Oh man.
And he calls me up. I'm at my cabin, my parents' cabin, and I heard that he was going to do this, and I'm like, Cody, I think this is dangerous. You know, like, you don't know what you're doing. And he calls me up and he says, like, a few hours into the morning, and he says, hey, Rick, I'm almost done.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, dude, what time does it start? And I don't know, 6 a.m.
Yeah.
You know. And he's like, and it's like 8. And I says, I don't think you're almost done, Cody. You know, I don't know how long a marathon takes.
The fast people are 3 hours. Come on, you know?
Yeah. And he's like, well, I see the lights of St. George. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. I think I don't understand how this happened. And he calls me up like 30 minutes later. And he says, hey, man, I was wrong. I thought that they were the lights of St. George. It was the lights of Vail.
Oh, no.
And he's like...
he's a ways away.
And yeah, he tells me the story, man, about how... Because he's never even trained, never prepared. And, you know, after he got done, I says, how was it, man? He's like, dude, it was crazy, bro.
But he finished.
Yeah, he finished.
Yeah.
And he says it was insane. He was in an ice bath for like a week after. I mean, it was not good. He was pretty
He was hurting.
But he's like, dude, my nipples started bleeding because he didn't know. He literally had never even researched a marathon.
Wow.
And he's like, dude, my nipples bled. Like, I had blood running down my shirt. And he says, I kept asking people. He says, I was jogging along, you know, or walking. He walked a lot of it. And he says, I was asking people, hey, you know, where do I go to the bathroom? And they're like, just hop off the side of the trail and go. And he's like, dude, it's a weird, crazy world.
Yeah.
You know, when you get out there and get into it as somebody who's never, like the cups of water, he thought the first stand, he ran by the first stand with the water people out. Mm-hmm. And he was asking somebody, he's like, man, I'm so thirsty, you know, and they're like, well, there's water stations. Yeah. He's like, dude, I thought they were selling lemonade. He's like,
that'd be a very profitable business, right?
Yeah. He's like,
we take Venmo.
Yeah. He says, I ran past the first one thinking, dude, I should have brought some money, man. I didn't, you know, and I'm like, but that just shows you like where he was at mentally.
But he did it.
He did.
I think that comes back to
it. Another one too.
His body was not made for that, but he committed mentally he was going to.
And that's what I was going to say.
That's a huge part about it.
I feel like the reason Cody was able to finish that race, I would have been in my head. You know, I would have been in my head of like just how I am with numbers, and I'm very strategic. I plan everything out. I know that I would have been like 1 mile, 2 miles.
Yeah.
And I would have just...
Look at your watch and estimating how long it would take and how you're feeling.
Yeah, I would be horrible about that. Whereas I think he was just like, you know, a squirrel, you know, a butterfly. And
how many miles has it been?
Yeah. And I think, you know, I always thought, I tell Dave the day before, I says, make sure you grab him at the finish line because he'll just keep running. You know, he just doesn't pay attention. Know. So, yeah, anyway, just kind of a funny story. But, yeah, I think that, like you're saying, you know, a lot of people want to just jump right in, get the result, and, you know, that's just not reality.
Yeah. The other thing is people expect it to come easier than it does. I think starting a business is hard, and a lot of people don't recognize that. That's why so many businesses fail, is because it's hard. And I've had a couple things that I always say is that starting a business is kind of like having kids. Is that when you think you're going to start having kids, you don't just have kids with the first person you meet.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to find the right person to start a business
Hopefully.
with. And then when you have kids, they suck everything out of you for years. They do nothing for you.
They consume.
They consume. They're like, you get no sleep. It's like a whole bunch of crap, literally, and it's just horrible for years. And they're cute, and they give you these little glimpses of, oh, kids are so fun. Kids are so cute. And then eventually you get older, and you're like, hey, go mow the lawn. And you're like, I got something out of my kid. He's 14, but I finally got something out, right? And then it comes a time later when you're, I don't know, at some age, nobody wants a 45-year-old sitting in their basement. So you got to have an exit plan, right? Get your kids out of the house. And with a business, it's so much like that. You've got to pick the right partners, not just whoever comes along. Mm-hmm. You got to work your guts out. Mm-hmm. You're going to be sleepless nights. You're going to be throwing a ton of money and resources into the thing for a long, long time. And it's going to give you nothing in return. Mm-hmm. And then down the road, this is the part that everybody forgets about. You've got to have an exit plan. Mm-hmm. You've got to have a way to get out of that business.
Yep.
And if you don't have one, now all of a sudden you're 70 years old, you're still running your business, and you can't retire, and you have no exit plan.
Yep.
And you essentially have a 45-year-old kid living in your basement.
Right.
And you're like...
You're an employee.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing for me is I would always try to build a business and sell it at the peak. Like when you buy or sell real estate or stock or something, like buy low, sell high. And so every time I was building a business or doing something with a business, I thought, you know what? This is as high as I believe I can take this. I'm out.
Yeah. I
Right?
like that. I like that.
And you groom somebody to take it over, or you groom some group of people to take it from you. And you paint this picture of, hey, look, if you want this, I can help you get it.
Yeah.
And this is what we'll do. And you put together a plan, you get them in the seat, and they start working at it. And next thing you know, they're happy. You're fulfilling their dreams because they never thought they'd be able to own a company like that.
Right.
And then you're out.
Yeah. Well, and that's when
And
I'm
on to the
starting
next
this one and talking to these guys, or I've been telling you guys all along, I'm here for, 18 to 24 months. That's what I want to do. And then I want to enjoy the fruits of the labor. I want to come to the events. I want to come to the hunts and the retreats. I don't want to be the CEO. That's not my long-term dream. And so you're absolutely right. Whenever I go into a new business now, I have my exit strategy planned at the start.
Yeah.
Because like you said, life slips away. People get, absorbed and caught up in it. And if you're not planning, fail to plan to fail, right?
Yeah. And I'm not faulting anybody that's had a business for 30 years. That's not my intention.
No.
But my thought is for me is I have serious ADD issues. Like I'm all in on something and I don't think about anything else while I'm working on that and building it. And my wife says you've got issues, right? Because I'm just addicted to whatever I'm working on and everything else suffers.
I think you have to
bad.
be. I tell my wife all the time, it's like I have a temper, I have, some of the same things I plan. I dive in, I'm all in, I can't turn it off. And but I think it's like at one point it can be a what's the word? A blessing or a curse.
Yeah. It's bittersweet for sure.
I think from just talking to you for just these few short minutes, it's like I see a lot of me in you, and a lot of your traits. And I think that you kind of have to have a lot of those traits or you're not going to be successful.
Yeah. And those traits I think comes down to just commitment and discipline.
Yeah.
But I think the other part of it is you mentioned this, that your wife was on board with it when you're working Christmas Eve and things like that.
Yeah.
She's supporting you in it.
Absolutely.
There were a lot of times where as I was building businesses, I would just come home and I was out. I was like, hon, I can't do this anymore. And she would pep talk me.
Yeah.
She'd say, hey, what do we really want? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And she'd talk through it and she's like, so we can stop now and we'll be fine. But if you just keep going, I'm with you and I'll support you. And then we'd take it to the next level. We'd finish whatever. And there were times I'd come home and she'd be like, hey, I have not been on a date with you in weeks.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you. Like, you're not around. Da, 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 da.
She'd bring you back the other one.
And I'd say, okay, are we on the same page here? And so you've got to have somebody, again, you've got to have people that support you, and you've got to have those people that are willing to push you to be your very, very best. And if they're not in your life, you're going to fail as well, even if you really want it. And if you push too far and your spouse isn't supporting you, you're either going to end up blowing up your marriage or you're going to end up failing your business. And so it's really, really important to have, I think, both of those to be able to achieve the success you want. 100%. You have to be on the same page.
Yeah, I look back, on those couple moments where I called my dad, and I think it's people who really know you. My father, who's, my mom said a quote yesterday that said, "Your dad is the only man in your life." She told my boy this, is the only man in your life who wants you to become greater than he is.
Yeah, so true.
And I love that, and I think, if I would have called my dad, who knows me, it's not just a buddy, I love my buddies and they know me, they know, the little bit of me. But you call your wife or your dad in those dark moments where you need a real answer. And if she would have said, get home, this isn't worth it, I would have went home.
Yeah, you would have done it.
Or my dad would have said, yeah, you're making a mistake. You need to, and I'm grateful that they believed in me enough to give me the words that got me to where I am. Because like you said, it's.
And I think the other side of that is people get offended by people all the time. You're starting a business and people are saying you're going to fail, you're not going to do well, blah, 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 blah. And my advice to them, because this is what I would tell myself, right? My advice to them is don't listen to them. You never take advice from anybody who you wouldn't seek advice from. You never take offense from somebody you wouldn't seek advice from. So if there's somebody who offends you by saying, oh, you know what, you're not good enough to do this, or you're never going to succeed, or whatever, if they're not in that inner circle of people that you would call on a Christmas Eve and say, hey, am I making a mistake here? If they're not in that circle, I don't care what they say. I really, really don't. And so to me, if my dad said the same thing, if I called my dad and said, hey, Dad, look, am I pushing too hard? Am I doing too much? Am I going to regret this? And he said, absolutely, I would back off. But if some random stranger on the street said, you're an idiot, why are you doing that? I don't care.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is so many people get offended and people stifle their hopes and aspirations and dreams based on the noise. And they need to focus on the value of what they know they can do and the belief of those people that know them the best, like your dad knew you, or like others that I confided in that knew me and said, keep going, man. You're on the right path. Do it. You got this.
And that's why I encourage everybody, to find a mentor even. It's like if I was going to get into running or some of the stuff that I know you do.
You find the best person you can that's willing to help you.
And they always are.
Sure.
That's what I've noticed is, 9 out of 10 times the people that are above you want you to come up. Yeah. The ones that are below want to pull you down.
The people that are truly successful, I believe, are there to help you.
They are.
And the ones that have this facade of success, they don't want you to succeed.
Yeah, because it puts a mirror in front of their face. Well, it's like, Bryce can go run a marathon. Yeah. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah, but it also exposes their fraud.
Yeah.
It shows their shortcomings and they don't like that.
Exactly.
But the real people that are successful, they love seeing other people succeed. They love teaching other people to succeed.
I've got a mentor. I've got a mentor in Phoenix of mine that's very successful in business. And I called him up and said, hey, will you mentor me? And he actually had a good point. He says, listen, Rick, I get a lot of people who want to be mentored. Mm-hmm. He says, I am 100% will mentor you, but please don't waste my time. If I give you the lessons.
Yeah, do it.
And so I went out and met with him. When I met with him, my first time was in Vegas, and I was broke, in debt, and just lost.
Yeah.
And I says, can I get an hour with you? He gave me 3 hours.
Wow.
And self-made, I really respected because he was self-made. He didn't inherit it. He was an orphan, got a great story. And I ended up going and following his plan as best I could. It took me 4 years. Mm-hmm. And 6 years later, I sent him a message from Spain. And I says, hey, Bill, just wanted to give you a heads up. I took everything you said. I listened. I checked off all the things you told me to do. And I want you to know I've been traveling with my family for 18 months.
That's awesome.
Not working. A big thing of his was exit strategy. I didn't have that plan. And he says, look, you're buried in your business. That you need to get, put these things in place to where you can leave your business, sell it. And I followed it. And I sent him a letter. And he wrote me a letter back. And he says, I cannot tell you how refreshing it is to have somebody that I talk to do it. And I think that's the hard part, is a lot of people, I think our culture these days is, I listen to the podcast. People are going to get on here and they're going to listen to this podcast. And we're going to start jumping into the adventure part of this now. And they're going to hear what you're doing. They're going to hear what the things that you've accomplished out there in the adventure world of, marathons and Ironmans. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people are reading the books. They're going to the seminars. They're listening to the podcast. But then they don't lace up their shoes.
Yeah.
And go start running 1 mile.
Yeah.
2 miles, 5 miles. I think people need to stop, at some point. It's like I have friends that say I've read a couple hundred books. And I'm like, well, what did you do with it?
Yeah, what are you applying with that knowledge?
And it's like, start applying it, start doing it. Read a book on, running a marathon and then go run a marathon. Mm-hmm. And so, I love all that stuff. Okay, so let's bring this back around. So you're married. You got some successful businesses. Obviously now you're, when did you start getting into, give me a little history of your adventure. From what I understand, it's marathons,
triathlons.
Ironmans.
Yeah, triathlons was a huge part of it. And honestly, my wife and I were just
triathlons, 3 events.
Yeah. So, basically I wanted to do something that was a challenge, right?
You've kind of already beat the financial world.
Well,
right?
I was in the middle of the success. So my first triathlon was in 2008.
Okay.
I started my company in 2005.
How old are you?
Right now I'm 43.
Okay, we're same age.
Yeah. So I was like 23 in real estate and almost 25 when I started my first company.
Okay.
And then 28 is when I got into triathlon. So I'd started a couple companies. I was having success. I had a little bit of built up anxiety of, hey, I need to do something.
Were you a runner before? I mean,
I'd played soccer. I think the most I'd run distance wise, I think I did some charity 5K and I thought I was going to die.
Which is like 2.5, 3 miles.
3.1 miles. Okay. And I was
that's where I would be right now.
But I mean, I was a meathead.
Yeah.
Anybody who knew me in college, I'm sorry. Anybody who knew me in high school, I was a jerk. I'm sorry. But I was a soccer player. I was a gymnast. The idea of running any distance that you'd measure in miles, not meters, was just beyond my comprehension.
That's where I'm at today.
And I'd been swimming a little bit. I'd wakeboarded a little bit. If you're in Southern Utah and you don't go to the lake, like you're living here for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely.
But I would go wakeboarding. My idea of swimming was I wrecked on the wakeboard. I've got to get back to the boat.
Yes.
And I had a life jacket and it's like 75 feet tops kind of thing and not a big deal. And then I'd biked on my mission and I'd bike running around town growing up because I didn't have a car.
Never miles though, never.
And so I'd had like some exposure to each of those. But when I got in triathlons, it was literally one of these, okay, I'm getting into triathlons to suck at 3 sports.
So how did you get into it? How you had to have a friend or somebody,
So it was
right?
my sister, my little sister. But my wife and I we were living in Salt Lake at the time because that's where I had all these businesses. And I thought, you know what? We need to do something together. It'd been a few years since we'd been cheerleaders and super active and working out on a daily basis together. And I thought, we've got to do something. And so we started looking for something we could do together. And we tried snowboarding and we sucked. And we tried other things and it was just like, this is not our thing. And then my sister had signed up to do a sprint triathlon, which I look back and laugh now that we thought it was a big accomplishment. But
what's a sprint mean? Shorter?
It's the shortest triathlon you can do.
Okay.
It's like usually 600-800 meter swim.
Hey guys, let's step away from the conversation real quick. And I wanted to talk to you about a few things that M42 Adventures is offering this year. First, I'd like to talk about our retreats experiences here in Southern Utah. They will be on a 50-acre ranch. Absolutely amazing property. And it's a place where you can come and learn from the experts in their fields, build friendships, and enhance your outdoor skills. We're going to have everything from fly fishing experiences, UTV experiences, horse riding, archery, survival experiences, hiking, outdoor cooking, firearms. It's absolutely amazing. We just had our last retreat a couple weeks ago. 33 people attended, and it was an absolute amazing event. If that sounds like something you'd want to come do, it's all inclusive, and I promise it will change you. So hopefully you can look into those dates. They are August 29th to September 1st and September 12th to September 15th. So look into that and see if those will work for you, and we'd love to see you out there. The other one is our Africa experiences. So this fall, we have 2 Africa experiences coming up, August 5th to the 11th and August 11th to the 17th. We've actually sold, I think, 19 places to those events, so it is filling up. But if you'd like to come out, again, it's men, women, children. I'm taking my wife and my 3 little boys aged 12, 9, and 3. So it's family friendly. Should be an absolutely amazing experience as well. It's not just hunting. You can come and do the photo safari, helicopter rides. We're going to go to an orphanage. I'm actually very, very, very excited about this one. So if that's something you'd like to come out and check out, I will be the headliner August 11th to the 17th, and Ryan Mickler will be the headliner August 5th to the 11th, and we'll be spending time, with you during that week and getting to know each other. So I would love to see you out there. Again, those are some of the things we have coming up. If that's anything you'd be interested in, we're also going to start offering corporate retreats, family group retreats here in Southern Utah. If you'd like to come out and have one of these experiences with the horses, with the UTVs, with the firearms, with the archery, and bring your company, your family, or just a group, we can cater it to you as well. So that's something new that we are going to start offering. We've got a couple of those in the works for this summer with some companies that want to bring their employees out and actually partner with M42 and have their own retreats. So just a few of the things we're offering. Again, we're excited about all this. If you'll continue to listen to the podcast, follow us on social media, like, share, follow. We sincerely appreciate that. All right, let's get back to this conversation.
And that's what I was going for.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about triathlons, the other thing that I really liked about it, is it doesn't matter if you're one of those people that just wants to finish, or you're one of the guys that's going to win the overall, or anywhere in between. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge.
Absolutely.
It's fun.
Absolutely.
And everybody there is willing to help you.
Yeah.
Like when you get in transition, you're setting up, you could walk up to the fastest pro in the world and say, hey, give me some pointers. And they'll take the time to do it.
That's awesome. It's a family.
Yeah, it is. And so that's kind of where it started. Is it was just, I was looking for something. My wife and I both got into it together. And then she got pregnant the next year with our first son. And I got addicted to where I was racing every weekend. I'd finish a race, I'd come home, I'd look online, I'm like, oh, look.
There's that many. I mean, there's races all over.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's one in Vegas. Let's go to Vegas next weekend. Yeah. Oh, look, there's one in Idaho. Let's go to Idaho and do, oh, there's another one in Salt Lake. And
all mostly triathlons?
Almost all triathlons at that point.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I could do other things. And so then it was like, oh, look, a century ride, or a half marathon, or a marathon. And
Century rides 100 mile.
Yeah, Century rides a 100-mile bike race. And
Jeez.
it was a fun place to be, because I always felt like it didn't matter what came up. I was in good enough shape to go do it.
That's rad.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
And then obviously going hiking and hunting and the other things I like to do, I'd go out there on an elk hunt and everybody I'm with is just dying. And I'm like, dude, we're only 12 miles in. Let's roll. Let's go. Let's do this. And I'm like, I know there's elk on top of that hill. And they're like, that's 3,000 feet up. I'm like, let's do this. Come on.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm dead. You just go without me.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, see you. And I take off.
That's crazy.
And I loved that component of being in shape, because then all the things I really wanted to do, I was in good enough shape to do.
Yeah. I mean, when you're physically fit to that extent, I mean, you can do anything really. I mean, you can really, your body's a machine.
It was. And that's where, I mean, it got to the point where, and I remember when we first got into it, I walked into a guy, BJ Christensen, amazing triathlete, like really, really good. Anybody who's in the triathlon scene in Utah, like 10, 15 years ago, you know who this dude is. I remember walking in, he was at St. George Running Center, and he was the manager there. And I walked in, and he had just completed the World Championship in Kona, which you have to qualify for.
That's the Ironman, right?
As the Ironman World Championship in Kona, but like the biggest race in triathlon.
Yeah, that's the one I've heard of.
And I remember saying to him, I was like, man, I don't think I could do an Ironman. And he looked me square in the eyes. He said, yeah, you can. You absolutely can. I said, dude, I've just been doing sprint and Olympic races. There's no way. He's like, yeah, you can.
So sprint is, what's Olympic?
So there's basically 4 distances of triathlons, right? Ironman is the big one. That's going to be a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and then a full marathon. Then there's the half marathon. That's a really popular one here in St. George. A lot of people do that one. It's in fact it's
half Ironman
or a half Ironman. That's this Saturday.
Oh, because it was a full, but they cut it because it was so difficult.
They've bounced back and forth. They did it as a full.
Yeah.
They did it as a full, and then it was a half for a lot of years. And they said we'll bring back the full, and now they're alternating.
Because it's very difficult.
It is difficult.
It's one of the most hardest ones, right?
Yeah, and they like to get a lot of participation. I might get some grief on this, but Ironman cares more about the money and the income than they do the sport, in my opinion. Get the the hate emails, but to me,
this is our 4th episode.
Yeah,
so.
to me, it's like
we're good.
I feel like the Ironman is a good distance of a race, and it's a challenge, but it's a little too hard for most people. And so the half Ironman has a lot more success, and Ironman recognizes that, and I think that's why the half Ironman does so well here.
That makes sense.
But the half Ironman is essentially half the distance of the full.
All of them.
So it's a 1.2 mile
60.
swim, and then a 56 mile bike ride, and then a half marathon. And those are fun because they're just fast.
Yeah.
They've turned into just an all out race to where, 4 hours and 45 minutes, you're done.
That is insane.
And if you're, I mean, even a lot of good amateurs are still 5 hours or so, and they're doing well.
That's crazy.
But again, it's a difficult race. And then about half that distance again, you've got a 1,500 meter swim for the Olympic distance, 1,500 swim, usually around a 25 mile bike ride, and then a 10K.
Okay, so they all kind of half from down.
Yep, and then the sprint is half the Olympics, so it's usually around a 600 to 800 meter swim, depending on the course and how they set it up, and then usually around a 12 to 15 mile bike ride, and then a 5K. And that was my favorite distance, to be honest with you, because I just love
enjoyable.
I love just going all out every weekend and racing.
Yeah.
And just seeing what I could do.
Well, I'm going to get into that. Some of my other questions down the road is here in a minute is, you know, I asked a few of our listeners, you know, what questions they would have for you. Because I've got my questions, but I've got a few others.
Yeah.
And one of those was recovery and how do you prepare. But we'll jump into that. So you got into triathlons.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to lay this out for people. So kind of, you know, what M42 Adventures is about is teaching people about what's out there.
Yeah.
You know, surfing, mountain biking. You know, what do you call what you do? I mean, because you're
I'd
getting
just say
into
endurance sports.
Okay.
And the thing is, it just one leads to another.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I didn't know if I could finish a sprint triathlon.
Yeah.
And then it was Olympics, and then it was half Ironmans, then it was full Ironmans, and I don't mean to sound arrogant or rude or anything, but an Ironman isn't appealing to me anymore.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because it doesn't hold that same prestige and pressure of, can I do that?
Yeah.
Because I know I can.
Yeah.
And so I want to find something else. So you know, this last week, and it's just different, but this last week my wife and I went down to Grand Canyon. We did rim to rim to rim.
Yeah, hold on that. I want to get into that.
We're just finding different things to push the envelope.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So people want to get into this. It's like you said, your sister, little sister got you into it. So find somebody, right? Go, like you said, I love that you said everything that I've ever gotten into, hunting. I mean, you know, you're down at the beach and I was just in Hawaii for a week and I went down there and I'm like, man, I want to learn how to surf. And the guy's like, dude, let me know.
Go find somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. I talked to a surfer and he's like, bro, I'll take you out. You know, you want to come back? You know, like most people are pretty understanding and want you to experience the love that they have.
Yeah.
And so I think for a lot of people who are listening that want to get into this stuff that maybe aren't in the best shape or, you know, it's like, just start.
Yeah.
You know, find somebody and jog 500 yards, you know, jog 1,000 yards.
And there's so many training plans online that you can find without cost. But what I've found is when you put some skin in the game, you're usually more committed than if you're not.
Yes.
So if you hire a coach, even if you don't think you're going to be committed enough, you're going to be more committed hiring a coach than you would if you don't. And if you go and buy a bike or you go and buy a wetsuit or you go and buy this stuff, you're going to be more committed than if you're just like, I'm going to borrow a friend's bike. I'm going to do this online coaching plan.
And one thing you mentioned was tell people.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things. You tell people. I told my family.
It's hard.
Yeah. For 2 years.
What are they going to think if I fail?
Yeah. I went to my dad and I says, hey, Dad, I'm going to retire in a year and I'm going to go travel the world. And he laughed. Yeah. I mean, he was just like, what?
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. And I started telling everybody and it becomes real. And then, like you said, you're afraid of letting them down.
Yeah.
You know, there's several times where I'm at work and I'm thinking, I don't want to do this or, you know, I don't want to make this sacrifice. And then I thought, no, now I've told 23 people. Now I've told 24 people. Yeah. And you know, I can't fake a cramp.
You're going to see them again.
Yeah.
And they're going to ask you, hey, how'd that triathlon go?
And they know you. And you know, they know Bryce. So when you say, oh, I almost drowned, they're going to make Bryce.
Like, come on,
bro.
What really happened?
Come on, man.
Yeah.
You know, and so you tell these people that are in your circle that you're going to do something and, you know, it becomes real and then it puts that pressure on you. And a lot of, you know, my success has been, you know, because of that where
there's accountability.
Absolutely.
Because when I was telling people I'm going to do triathlons and then they would see me, they're like, dude, why are you eating a cookie? I thought you were doing triathlons. I thought you were getting in shape. You can't eat that kind of garbage.
Yeah.
And then you'd see people and they're like, so what workout did you do this last week? And even at work, right?
Yeah.
All the people that I was working with were like, oh, so what race do you have coming up? Or what are you doing this weekend for your long run or your long bike or whatever?
Yeah.
And so you'd tell them and then you'd come back in there the next week and they'd say, so how'd your bike go? And how'd your run do?
Yeah.
And so it kind of creates
I bet a lot of them are in it.
It requires this obligation, as you're telling people before, there's an obligation of what you're going to do.
Yep.
And then there's accountability afterwards of, did you do what you said you were going to do?
Yeah.
And so that's what's nice about telling people. And I think that makes you more vested of people that you don't want to let down or people that are going to ask you.
Yeah. And so, everybody loves a good story. I mean, look at, you know, some of my favorite movies like Rudy and all these movies where somebody, you know, to watch, you know, we didn't know each other then, but I'm just one of those guys where you know, Ricky knows me, you know, he's here in the room, where I love hearing people say, I'm going to do this. And then I'm like, do it, man. Yeah. I want to watch. Like, and then I just, you know, it's like to be a fly on the wall of that, you know, experience of what you went through, you know, people got to see some.
There's too many people that just give up. I mean, I always look at it and I say, if you're going to be successful in life, whether it's getting in shape or running a marathon or doing an Ironman or starting a business or anything, if you're going to be successful, I think there's like 3 kinds of people in this world. And I jokingly say, if you drop them in the middle of the ocean and then drove off and said, land is that way, right? You're going to get 3 different responses. The first person is going to be like, I can't see the land. It's too far away. They're going to throw up their arms. They're going to drown on the spot. They're just like, I can't do it. It's not even possible. I can't see myself accomplishing this. And they give up. The second ones will take off like gung-ho, like they're going to conquer the world. And then 100 yards later, they'll get tired or they'll, you know, whatever. And then they make up excuses and they blame somebody else and then they drown.
I like that, yeah.
And then the third type of person will not stop swimming until their feet hit the sand. And that's the kind of person that succeeds. And that's the kind of person, that's the mentality and the commitment that you have to have if you're going to do something, whether it's triathlons or starting a business or getting into a marriage or anything. I believe you have to be that third type of person.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe you are, you're not committed enough.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how much the waves or the current or a shark attack or it's dark or I'm cold or it's cramped or anything, that third person is going to push through it. And they're going to keep going until their feet hit the sand and they're going to stand up and be like, now, who pushed me in the boat? Who pushed me in the water? That person's going to die.
I just did a recording with Ryan, and we talked a lot about this. You know, I mentioned, which you probably know these guys, like David Goggins and Cam Haines.
Yeah, there's no fail.
He's had them on their, you know, podcast, and I kind of use the, you know, saying, man, you know, it's hard to emulate these guys because they're just so far above and beyond that the disconnect. You know, I had a buddy who was talking to me, and he says, if you get people on your podcast, you know, have the greats on there, but have them tell us how they got started, how, you know, show us that they're human. And so that's kind of where my questions are going with you, where, and Ryan says, dude, I interviewed Cameron, I interviewed David, and he says, you know, yeah, you can go interview somebody that runs, you know, a 5K every weekend, and that's great. Yeah. But I want to interview the David Goggins because they are humans.
Yeah. They're just don't seem like it.
They just have a different mentality of not giving up.
There's no fail.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to do it if you commit to something. And that reminds me of an Ironman I did. We talked about the Ironman St. George here. And in 2012, I just moved down here. I'd sold some businesses. I moved down here. I was building a house and some other things were going on. I was not training. I'd not trained for months, kind of just put my bike in storage and was done with things for a while. And I found out like 2 weeks before that it was going to be the last year they had the full Ironman St. George. And I was like, I can't be living in St. George doing triathlons and not have done this race. Everyone's going to ask me for years, oh, did you do Ironman St. George? I can't tell them no. I'm like, I got to do this. And so I told my wife, I was like, hon, I'm going to do Ironman St. George. She's like, when is it? I was like, next weekend. And she's like, no. And I started telling some friends and I started calling. Like I called some of my friends who'd seen me race in the years past. And I was like, hey, do you think I can do this? And he's like, next week? I'm like, yeah. And he said, honestly, anybody else I'd say no, but yeah, you could do it. And I talked to a couple people that gave me similar responses. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. But first I'm going to go to the pool. I went up to the Washington Rec Center. I swam like 2.4 miles, cold turkey. And hadn't been in a pool in at least a year.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like,
I swim a lot of laps and that
I'm like, that hurt
crazy,
but I can do it. And then I went out and I grabbed my wife and she's got our baby in a stroller and she's handing me water bottles and I'm running out through the Washington fields. And I think I ran like 8 or 9 miles, just cold turkey. And I was like, all right, I could keep that pace for a marathon. And I came back, I was like, now I've got to do this crazy wall. It's like a 44-mile loop out through Vail and you come up the Vail Hill in the back.
Yeah.
And it's steep enough they call it the
twice,
wall.
Right?
You did it twice. And I'd never done it. I'd never biked that part of the course. I thought, you know what? I've seen the other parts. I biked on the other parts. I've never seen that. So I need to go bike it once just to know what it's like. And I did it. I came home, hung up my bike, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And I signed up. And I did it. And I remember getting in the water and just thinking, this is going to be a tough day. But I don't care if I get 20 flat tires. I don't care if I'm cramping and crawling. I will finish this race, and nothing is going to stop me. And I remember starting the race, and it felt great. The water was smooth. It was beautiful. It was a nice,
because there's been some bad years. There's been some.
This was the year.
Oh, okay.
We go down to the buoy, and the first buoy, I start feeling my body oscillate and like go up and down like 3 feet at a time. I'm thinking, man, these boats are too close. Like, because there are boats out there patrolling and stuff, right? I was like, these boats are too close. And I'm looking, and I round the first buoy, and I see, no, that's not boats, that's waves. And I kind of glance off to the left side, and I could see Pine Valley just start to get covered in dust. And I've been around in St. George enough to know what that means. I'm like, this is going to be an ugly day.
Whitecaps.
And by the time I got to the second buoy to turn north, and that's the longest leg of the swim, because, I mean, you're 2.4 miles. You go down a little bit, over a little bit, and then the long way up and back in the dock. Mm-hmm. And I remember rounding the buoy, and the buoy's like right there, and I do like 3 or 4 strokes at my pace that I knew I could hold for 2.5 miles. Mm-hmm. And I do a couple strokes, and the buoy's there. I do a couple more strokes, and the buoy's farther away. No. And I did a couple more strokes, and the buoy's even farther away, and I go, oh, crap. And that's when I had to do this reality check of like, I'm 15, 20 minutes into this race.
Right.
Of what I know is going to be a 10, 12-hour day. Like, it's go time.
Yeah.
And I just put my head down. I just started swimming as hard as I could, and gradually I made it up there, and I came in on the water, and I was like, I'm so glad this is over. And then reality hit. I was like, it's gusting 30, 40 mile an hour winds.
Yeah.
This 112-mile bike ride is going to suck.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things, just one thing after another. And it was a brutal day. It was hard. I think at the time, it was the highest DNF rate, which did not finish.
Yeah. Didn't somebody get injured in the swim?
No one drowned, but there were a couple actual boats that sank during the swim.
Yeah, I remember hearing it.
And they pulled something like 40% of the people from the water.
Wow.
Because they'd either given up or they were at risk of drowning and in trouble. And so they pulled 40% of the people from the water.
Wow.
And then because the swim took so long, most people didn't even make the bike cut off before they pulled you from the bike course. Yeah. And so it was a brutal day, but at the same time, I said, I will finish this race. Yeah. And it was just that mentality that I'm not going to give up.
Yeah.
And I hadn't trained.
That's crazy.
I hadn't done anything. I was like eating Oreos and a Subway sandwich on the bike, just trying to keep nutrition in me. You know, it's like, give me something. But it was, I mean, it was like it was a tough day, but it all comes down to just that mentality of I'm not going to give up, you know?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's unbelievable. Ricky, what where are we at on time?
Hour 2.
So got another 15 minutes or here. So Bryce, I want to hear just as quickly as you can. I got a couple questions too that I want to go through that we can answer pretty fast on.
Okay.
You know, I like specifics, like how do you deal with, or prep for muscle failure? You know, you're 43. I'm sure it's changed a lot now since.
Yeah.
But 5-10 minutes, whatever. Take your time. I want to hear it, but walk me through so you and your wife, how long ago was this?
That we were doing triathlons?
No, the Grand Canyon. Like recent, right?
Yeah, like last week.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe 10 days ago now or something.
So on your anniversary, I understand this right?
It's our 20th anniversary in July.
So but
you'd be stupid to run the rim in July down there.
So it's April. April, and you and your wife packed up, went to the North Rim or South Rim?
The South Rim. The Grand Canyon North Rim is still closed for snow closure and stuff.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you decided to go from, because I called you and I says, Ricky told me you went from the South Rim to the North Rim, and you're like, and we went back.
Yeah.
Like you went.
Yeah, there's no quitting. And that's the other thing is there's no quitting at the North Rim right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you get halfway through and you're like, I can't do this anymore.
You're camping in snow.
Yeah, you're there. Like you have to get back. And so my wife and I were just like, hey, we've just every 5-year on our anniversary, we want to do something quote unquote bigger and badder than we did last time.
Good luck next year.
A few years ago, we did like a 34-mile thing in Canada. Before that, you may have heard of the Nepali coast on Kauai, if you've traveled a lot. Mm-hmm. We trail ran that. It was like 26 miles by the time you hit the waterfalls and everything. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, this is just fun. I like being able to do this stuff. What are we going to do? And so we looked at the Grand Canyon. We thought, you know what? That'd be fun. It's 45, 50 miles, 11,000 something feet of gain. It's a challenge. It's on everybody's bucket list. We knew a lot of people that had done it. I think we could do that. And so we just started training and working for it.
Where my mind goes with that is it's a whole different ball. I mean, you're running around here in town or on a highway or a trail, a path.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I mean, to go out there, you're dealing with rocks and uneven ground and switchbacks. And
and
the
I
Colorado
turfed it.
River, did you?
Yeah, I wrecked. If you see my Facebook post, it's got I've got a bloody hand, my elbow and everything. I
Where
rode.
were you at into the race when that, or
I
into
was
the?
like-
It wasn't even a race. You chose to do this.
Yeah, we just wanted to do it. So it was self-supported. Basically,
Yeah.
all the nutrition, everything you're going to pack for the.
That's the other
for the
thing
50
too,
miles
is
you
I
gotta
have
carry with
so
you.
many questions, because it's like when I walk a mile, I need a gallon of water.
Yeah.
How,
Well, after you've run enough, you get to know your body.
Yeah.
And I mean, just for me, I know I've got to have some salt intake every 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how much I'm sweating.
Okay.
I need to have about 150 calories an hour of quick sugars and stuff to keep me going.
Okay.
Whether it's Gatorade or chocolate milk or
A Snickers.
a Snickers. Yeah. I mean, I jokingly, I'll put corn nuts in there. I'll put Red Hots. I'll put in fruit leather, Snickers.
Sugar and salt. Sugar and salt.
Yeah. Sugar and salt. And so I just kind of do that. And then
Sugar.
I'll have,
So salt, again, just assume that I know nothing, because I don't.
yeah, salt.
Salt
When you
retains
sweat,
the water.
yeah, when you sweat, like if you ever see somebody who sweat a lot and they're wearing a
Woody
black
earlier.
shirt, when it dries, it's all white. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can see the sweat
Yeah,
marks because that's the salt and the potassium and magnesium and other things that are in your sweat. So you have to replenish those in your body.
Okay.
And if you don't, you find yourself cramping horribly.
Okay.
Things go really bad.
I have a buddy that's in Wildland Fire, and he told me, because I elk hunt a lot and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
I told him, like, man, the next day I had cramps, and he says, we actually have salt tablets.
yeah. That's what I take.
Okay.
So you can get them. You can get them online on Amazon. You can
So
get
if
them
I'm up
anywhere
elk hunting, you just pop one of those every 45 minutes?
It depends on how much you're sweating.
Okay.
Like if it's a hot elk hunt or something, I'll take them. I just have them in a little Ziploc bag,
Okay.
like just a little tiny Ziploc bag, and I'll put, depending on how many hours I'm going to be out there, I'll take anywhere from 1 to 3 in an hour.
Wow.
Depending on
That's
how much I'm
interesting.
sweating.
You know your body well enough to know, you can adjust.
Yeah.
You're running down the road and you're like, I need another bite of my Snickers.
Yeah. Well, after you've done enough of them, you just know, hey, if I don't stay on top of this, I'm going to suffer later.
Wow, that's interesting.
Because anybody, and I say this, but I don't care how good a shape you're in. If you've been training remotely for anything, you can go out there and run a couple miles. You don't need salt.
Absolutely.
You don't need nutrition. You don't need whatever. You're going to be fine.
Right.
But when you get going long distances,
Which
or when you're,
is 10 plus? 5 plus?
I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's true.
like if I'm going to be doing 15, 20, 30 miles of running or hiking in a day, I'm absolutely going to plan out my nutrition.
Okay, that's good to know.
And I'm getting old enough, I hate to admit this, but I'll throw ibuprofen and acetaminophen in there, like Tylenol.
Yeah.
And I'll set like a pre-workout thing that I'll start the day and I'll say, okay, I know I'm going to be hurting today, right? So I'm going to start with acetaminophen. And then I have little baggies that I'll do like every 2 hours. And then 8 hours later, I'll have another baggie with acetaminophen.
Acetaminophen is Tylenol,
yeah.
or why do you use that and not ibuprofen?
I alternate. This is crazy,
'Cause
right? You can take them every 4 hours if you alternate, but if
Okay.
you only take one, you have to wait 8 hours.
Oh, interesting.
And I mean, if you haven't figured this out yet, I like to hurt.
Yeah,
So I
right.
push that limit,
Yeah.
and I know if I can take something in
I'm
2
gonna
hours,
be hurting for 12 hours. I gotta have.
yeah,
I
I'm
gotta
gonna
have
be willing to push harder.
4 sets.
And so I'll do little baggies, and in that I'll have combinations of salt tabs and acetaminophen or other things that I know. Like if you've got medications and you're out there and your brain's not in the right spot, you can just pull out your little baggie that says 2 on it. You're like, 2 hours in, that's what I should take.
Okay, that's awesome.
And then I know that, hey, I haven't been sweating that much. It's 40 degrees out here. It's cold. I haven't been sweating.
I don't need salt.
I won't take the salt. And
I'm
I
good.
know what they look like, and so I just won't take those. But on the other hand, if it's like 90 degrees, 95 degrees, 100 degrees, and I'm sweating a ton, I've drank a lot, and I can tell I've lost some weight. And then there's indicators too. If your heart rate spikes beyond control, you're dehydrated. If you have trouble keeping your heart rate in a normal zone for the same effort, you're dehydrated. You need to take on some salt. You need to take some.
Okay.
And then the other hand is if you take too much salt, you'll start feeling sick. Like your stomach will feel churny and stuff like that. And so there again, you got to kind of figure that out and know, hey, I've trained and trained and trained. I've been doing this to my body for years. If I take too much salt, this is how I feel. If I'm dehydrated, this is how I feel. And so it helps me kind of moderate that. But that comes from experience. But
That's
you've
the
got
thing
to
is-
know what to
is-
start with.
Yeah, that's like exactly like we were saying. I want to go run. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not a big runner. I'm 6'5". It's like when I run, I actually ran with my buddy in San Diego who just started running recently. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dude, I've never ran. since high school, I'll race my oldest boy because I just told him we're going to race every year and you're never going to win me. But as far as long distance, and we were actually in San Diego a few months ago, and he's like, let's just run around the block. And I'm like, all right. We got like half a mile, and I'm like, bro, I'm going to die.
He beat you.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to die. Like, I'm out of shape, dripping sweat. And so that's just kind of like you were saying, that's still my mentality is, you know, I just haven't gotten over that thing. But when you start talking, and that's where I think everybody needs to try different things because, you know, I hear you talking. I'm like, man, triathlon doesn't sound like it's for me. You know, a marathon doesn't, but running in the woods, running in Kauai.
If you think about it,
that might be it.
How many years you put in for an elk hunt in Utah?
20
plus.
Yeah,
25.
I just shot that last year.
You finally draw a good tag.
24 years.
Yeah. And when you're that committed to something, you've got 24 years you've been trying to do something. You're going to train, you're getting in shape.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those people are going to listen. Those people are going to listen to this podcast and go, okay, I'm not doing Ironman. I'm not doing a triathlon, but I am going to be working my guts out for a week, 10 days on this elk hunt.
Yeah.
I need to know my body. I need to know nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of a general rule of thumb is I try to sip water every 8 to 10 minutes. Just one sip once, like when I'm working out.
But if you're running
doing that
south rim and north rim, how much water would you have? Are you filling up at the river? Do you have like a filter?
So it depends on what's
open.
Is
there stations?
There are stations. At the time, there are water breaks, and so everything north of what they call Phantom Ranch is closed. And so we were able to fill up at Manzanita, which is, so you start at the south rim. We started at South Kaibab. The first 7.5 miles, there's no water. And so you'd fill up there. And then you go another 8 miles, and then there's water. And you can fill up there, like actual running water. And then you go up to the rim, and you turn around and come back down, and then there was water again. Now, there's lots of places to get water, but sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off.
Right.
The day before we got there, the one trail wasn't even open. It had been closed all winter because they were replacing a water line. Mm. The day after we left, the entire north rim trail the water was off because there was a pipeline break. Mm. And so it's just intermittent.
It's a variable. You don't know.
You've got to be able to be willing to filter water or treat water or something like that. And there's streams and there's springs and stuff like that you can fill up along the way if you absolutely need to.
Just like hunting. You're out, you're in the mountains. I mean, there's some opportunity, but you got to be ready for if there's not or if there is.
Yeah, and I've done sheep hunts where literally we come across water. It's only water for 10 miles and there's a dead squirrel in there. Right. And we're like, this is nasty. I'll put an extra tablet in there, right? But I'm going to drink it.
Yeah.
And so you kind of just do what you have to do. But
crazy.
But I always, just my nutrition regimen, back to that is I'll take a sip of water every 8 to 10 minutes. Just one gulp, I'll fill my mouth, swish it around, and swallow it. Wow. That's it. Every 8 to 10 minutes. When I'm hiking, when I'm hunting, when I'm running, it doesn't matter. That's it.
Oh, that's good to know.
And then every 45 minutes, I try to get some sugar, right?
Will you write this down, Ricky? For me, I really want to know this. So
to where about every hour,
I guess I can go back and listen to it.
Yeah, I'm trying to eat about 150 calories an hour when I'm working hard.
Okay.
And if I'm working really, really hard, then it might go up from there.
Salt or sugar or both? A little bit of mixture, like pine nuts, you're saying, Snickers?
So I usually do salt tabs. My wife really likes Gatorade or something like that she can drink some calories and have sodium. And I think that's just a personal preference. For me personally, I prefer the salt tabs because it's easier to get what I need when I need it.
Okay, it's instant. It's
I don't have to say, I need to drink this many calories and this much
I'd be
fluid
the same way.
To get that salt I need. I'm like, this is a 3-pill, man. I'll take 3 pills.
Yeah.
Versus, I haven't sweated a lot. I'll take 1 pill.
Yeah.
And then I can just drink my water as I need. And then I'll do like 150 calories an hour, 1 to 3 salt tabs an hour. And then
what do your calories look like? Are they like power bars?
It's sugar, man.
Sugar.
So that's the thing is
what is this? So salt is for water retention.
Salt's for water retention. I'm classifying salt tabs, but magnesium, potassium, all those different.
That's all in the salt.
Yeah, it's all in the salt tablets.
Okay.
And those are to help reduce cramping more than anything.
Okay.
And to keep your muscles
I was thinking
going.
that's what the sugar was for. Sugar is energy.
Sugar is energy.
That's it.
And you need the fast energy. So a lot of people quote unquote carb load before. They'll eat pasta and all that kind of crap.
I've heard of that.
Leading up to the race. And that makes sense because that gives you good solid energy going into the race to start. But when you're doing these long races or long hikes, you're hiking for 20 miles in a day on an elk hunt, or you're running a marathon or an ultra marathon or an Ironman, you're going to run out of energy. Your body does not have Like when I
Can't
did
store.
Yeah, I mean, this last weekend I did the West Rim with my 13-year-old son, and we were gone, I don't know, 4 hours.
Zion?
Yeah, in Zion. And
You ran it?
yeah. And I burned probably like 4,000 calories. And you're not going to be able to have that much in store.
Yeah, you're not.
And your body's,
I might.
your body's capable of converting fat, but it's so slow to metabolize the fat into energy.
Okay,
You're going to get lightheaded. You're just going to bonk.
Okay.
Right. You're going to be running along and you're going to be like, oh, I have nothing left.
Right.
And this is part of what I'm teaching my son right now is we're going out running. He's 13.
Okay.
We'll go out and we'll go running and he's like, Dad, I'm tired. And I can always tell when he's tired because he stops talking. Other than that, his mouth's just like, blah, 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 which is great. I love it. I love talking to him.
Yeah.
But I can tell when he gets tired because he stops talking. And I'm like, eat some sugar. Pull out some Mike and Ike's, pull out a candy bar, pull out something. You need to eat some sugar. And I'm like, all right, he'll eat sugar, drink some orange juice. And then 10 minutes later, blah, 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 blah. And so he's good. But he'll hit that wall. And it's really easy for me to see that and recognize it in him.
Right.
But for me, it's like I know when I'm running low on energy and my body starts saying, okay, I need to start burning some fat. And it's just a different feeling. And so by keeping the sugar.
So 150 calories.
150 calories. And you're bigger than me. You're probably going to need more, 175, 200.
Yeah.
But I mean, you want to have enough sugar to where you don't bonk.
Okay.
And most people, when they bonk, it's for one of two reasons. They're either cramping because they don't have their sugar right, or they bonk because they don't have enough calories. Or sorry, they cramp because they don't have enough salt. Or they're hitting the wall because they don't have enough sugar and calories to burn.
Okay.
I mean, you think about a race car. It's got to fill up.
Right. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You can have a reserve tank.
Yeah.
But if you're going far enough, you need to fill up.
You're going to run out of gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing is you got to do that. And then I would say third is the hydration, and I'm just not in good enough shape. I think that's the last thing why people fail or give up in a race is that they don't recognize it, but that's the last thing. If you're on top of your hydration, you're on top of your nutrition, you're on top of your salt, you can go and go and go and go. You'd be surprised. Again, it's a mental thing. You got to commit to it.
Yeah.
But when
just
you
like
put
anything. But if you know, because I'm glad we had this conversation because, like I said, I'm very active outside. I just don't go run, but I'm also very active. But I haven't spent a lot of time on the nutrition part.
It's key.
To me, it seems like
Absolutely.
if I go and run at the gym, for a month and then go try to do a marathon, I have a chance. But you're saying you go do that, but you don't have the right nutrition the day of.
You're gonna suffer.
You're gonna bonk.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think if you know your body, then you're gonna be fine the day of the race.
Right.
And so all those training runs or all the training hikes and all the things leading up to your outcome or your marathon, you're going to learn. You're going to experiment. I ate 300 calories every hour for 10 hours, and I thought I was going to puke. Right. Or I did puke.
Right.
Like, that's too many.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Or I ate 100 calories an hour, and I bonked 5 hours in on my hike.
Right.
I can't have that happen on my elk hunt. I need more calories. And so you're kind of going back and forth to figure out what that happy medium is. And then once you get it dialed in, you're like, okay, I need 150 calories every hour.
Right.
And I can go for 10 or 15 hours.
Right.
And then it's for me, it's whatever I crave. For years and years, it was goos, those gel sport packs and whatever
I've seen
else.
So much.
I can't stomach those things anymore. I'll throw up. I've had too many of them. So now it's like all the stuff that I walk down the candy aisle. I'm like, Snickers sounds good. Butterfinger sounds good.
Yeah.
I eat nut rolls and whatever else that I'm like, ooh, gooey nerds or gummy nerds.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try those. And I just eat candy. It's crazy, but it works.
I had a buddy come out to Hawaii hunting axis deer with me a couple years ago. And he shows up and he's got like this big old box of, I think it was Diet Coke.
Okay.
And some kind of like, I think it was hot tamales.
Yeah.
And just bags of them. And I'm like, bro, what are you doing? And he's very fit. He's not running, but he lifts.
Yeah.
And he's like, bro, I need sugar.
Yeah. That's
and
what
I'm like, I'm like, but yeah, shouldn't you be eating like fruit or? And he's like, yeah. He's like, there's probably a little bit better, but he's like, this works for me, and I'm burning it so fast that it's just. I mean, he's got
too heavy to pack.
Yeah.
I mean, to pack 20 pounds of fruit isn't realistic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And protein is helpful after the workout. Right.
Okay.
I mean, if you've lifted, if you worked out muscles and stuff, like once you've killed your muscles, you need protein in you like 30 to 45 minutes after your workout.
Right.
To rebuild that muscle, because that's when that regenerative tissue starts happening. And so for me, it was always sugar on the run. And then as soon as I'm done, the sugar's over. and I don't hit the carbs right afterwards. It's protein, and I'll
recovery.
Yeah,
just recovery.
40 grams of protein every 2 or 3, 4 hours until for the next couple of days, until my stomach.
40 grams of protein every what?
Every couple hours.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's crazy. I mean, I love it. I love it because that's how my mind works.
Your body's only capable of, and this is again just what I've studied and learned, is about 35, 40 grams of protein at a time is what your body can digest and absorb. And anything more than that is going to be wasted or not absorbed, and it's hard on your kidneys if you're taking 100 grams of protein at a time.
Okay.
But if you're going to do like 35, 40 every couple hours, and you've gone and just killed yourself on a hike or hunt or something, you need, or lifting, you need to rebuild that muscle, because when you're working out, you're breaking down that muscle tissue. And so you need to rebuild it.
I didn't realize I just barely started in the last couple of years. I didn't ever go to the gym. I don't like the gym. Just, it's hard for me, but I've, lost 40 pounds in the last couple of years and just trying to be more fit. And I just learning now, because my buddy says eat protein after you're in. So I go home and eat, 100 grams of protein, thinking I'm good to go, but I ate it in one sitting. You're saying spread it out.
Yeah, you need to spread it out because your body can't absorb it that fast.
Yeah.
And then the other part is, I'd always, like my saying has been for years, if you want to, compete like an animal, or I'd say a monster, if you want to compete like a monster, you need to train like a monster.
Yeah.
And you need to eat like a monster. And then this is the hardest part for me, is you need to sleep like a monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't go in there and kill yourself day after day after day training and not sleep a ton.
Yeah.
And that's been the hardest part for me for years.
Yeah. Just don't sleep good.
I just don't sleep enough.
Yeah.
Like I've always been 4-6 hours. I'm like, right, let's hit the day.
Oh, that's not me.
And my wife's like, you need more sleep. You're going to die. And she does all these studies, and it's true. The science is there.
I just talked to my dad. He's got heart problems.
Yeah.
And they're testing his sleeping.
You need to be able to sleep
And I'm
more.
like, why aren't they testing your blood pressure or your, diet? And he says, they said lack of sleep will kill you.
It's crazy. I got this Garmin, little plug for Garmin. I love Garmin.
I actually have that on here is.
It tells me how much I've slept. It tells me how much, and I'm like, okay. And I've started adding that data into, I'm a data guy, right?
Me too, yeah.
And I would look at the data and say, when I sleep at least this many minutes of deep sleep and this much of REM, it doesn't matter what my total sleep is, but if I get that much, I feel great. And I mean, if I sleep 9 hours, that never happens, but say 8 hours. If I sleep 8 hours and then I only get 20 minutes of deep sleep, I'll feel like crap. But if I sleep 6 hours, but 2 hours if it's deep, I feel amazing.
That's interesting.
And so Garmin is able to kind of track that while I sleep. And so I wear the watch all the time. And I think that's helped me a lot in my training as well, to just say, okay, I figured out the workouts. I figured out the nutrition. Now I'm figuring out the sleep. And if I put those three together, I think anything I want to do, I can do it, because I'm training like a monster. I'm eating like a monster. I'm sleeping like a monster. I will be a monster.
Right.
And I mean, it's a joke, but that's kind of the reality of it, is if you want something, you've got to do all the parts of it. And they always say, if you're trying to lose weight, you're never going to out-train the kitchen.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you cannot just work out without making changes in your nutrition. You have to be able to diet a little bit, or you're not going to make it.
Well, the way I lost my weight, I was in Costa Rica with some friends, and I was 260, and my buddy was 260, and he's shorter than me. But I says, man, I need to lose like 40 pounds. And he's like, me too. And I says, hey, let's do $1,000 bet.
Yeah.
It was August. I says, let's go Christmas Day. Whoever can get to 220 or closest, it was $1,000. We both make it.
Okay.
And he got down to like 235 or something. I got down to 220.
Nice.
And he swims and went to the gym, and so I just started working out in the last couple of years. This was like 3 years ago, and my entire loss was just my diet. Yeah. Didn't step one, which he informed me later. He's like, now you're losing muscle mass.
Yeah, exactly.
And, he warned me of the concerns of that, and so then I started hitting the gym, and that's what I do now. Is I go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. I don't like it, but I want the results. Yeah. Right. I see the guys that are fit like you, and I know that didn't happen by luck. It's a constant lifestyle.
And people look at that. I mean, going back to the business here, this all ties together. Is people look at your business success and like, oh, you just got lucky. I hate that.
I heard that the other day.
I'm
from
like,
a really
did not
good friend
get
of mine.
lucky. I worked my guts out.
Oh my gosh.
I took risks that other people were not willing to take. I mean, I started a software company, and I kid you not, we were throwing 12, 15 grand a month out the window on something that I did not make a dime on for years. Yeah. And it was like just work, throwing money out the window on this thing. And then finally we launched, and I was like, dude, this is sweet. And then people are, oh, you just got lucky. Oh, this must be nice. It must be nice. Like my brother's building the big plumbing company in Salt Lake, and he just had a custom suit tailored. And on the inside, instead of putting his name, like I do my name on the inside, all my custom suits. I do on my collar. And on the inside of his, it says, it must be nice. Yeah. Because he hears it so much from all of his employees, and they just don't get it. Yeah. And so that's the thing is, you've got to put it all together. You've got to be willing to put in the work. You got to be willing to put in the time, and it's a science. And like 2 + 2 is 4 all day long. You've got to eat and train and sleep, and you'll get the result you want. But you have to be committed. And
I think a lot of it too that people don't realize is, I was watching. There's Jelly Roll. He's a country singer type guy. I don't even know what he is, but his acceptance speech for his award just barely was. He was Vocal Musician of the Year, and he says it's pretty funny. I'm standing up here accepting this award for a guy who's been grinding for 20 years, and I'm the new country artist of the year. He says that's funny because he's been working in dive bars and all the things for he's
I'm not new in his mind,
and he's like
I'm 20 years in.
Yeah, but that's all people are going to see is I want what he has, and it's like he got lucky, and it's like you didn't see him sleeping in a van, sleeping on a couch. He may have got lucky that day that agent walked in and saw him playing at that bar. Yeah. But he put himself in the right position to get lucky on that day. Yep. And so, well, man, I could talk to you. I love the story. I have to have you back on down the road. I love the story. Like I said, I got some questions here. I think we answered most of them. How do you deal with prep for muscle fatigue? You told me about all that, vitamins, the effects that age is having on you. I mean, it's just different now, right?
I think age, I would always, and this is the thing that just cracked me up, is when I was 20, I'd see people that were like 25 and they'd put on 40 pounds since high school. And then, dude, just wait till you're 25, man. Yeah. Your metabolism changes, slows down so much harder. I'm like, all right. And then I hit 25. I'm like, all right. Yeah. It didn't happen to me. Yeah. And then at 30, I'd start seeing people, oh, just wait till you're 35. And then I'm 40. And, oh, just wait till you're 45. And I've come to the realization that if you keep active, or even if you're not active and you start living that life, you're going to be back. Yeah. It's the people that just passively accept who they are and be like, you know what? I'm 40 pounds overweight. Whoop-de-doo. Yeah.
And I think it gives them that excuse. Like you said, it's that, I got a cramp, boys. I'm old. That's the reason I'm overweight. And I'm in better shape than I have been in 20 years.
Yeah. Well, and I started
but it's because I try.
I started down that slope. I mean, here a couple of years ago, I was working for a big finance company and like a Wall Street big, big company. Mm-hmm. And I got promoted to be an executive. I moved down to California. I was working ridiculous hours.
Desk job?
Not so much desk, but I was eating out a lot.
Okay.
And like always wining and dining people. Okay. I mean, I had like 350 people that I was responsible for. And I was always, I ate at like Fleming's Steakhouse like 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah. And I mean, just always going out to eat and just always crazy hours and traveling a lot and whatever else. And I put on like 10, 15 pounds for the first time ever in my life. And it was not 10 or 15 pounds I wanted. Yeah. Let's put it that way. Right. And I just remember coming home and be like, this is not me. Yeah. I'm to the point where I either need to buy new clothes or I need to do something about this. Interesting. And I made the decision I was going to do something about it. Right. And the thing is, I think a lot of people are like, I'm just going to buy new clothes. Yeah. And I was at that threshold. And so I could see just how easy it was. Like, this is a lifestyle, man. This is what everybody does. This is normal. This is fine.
And you still look good. I mean,
at 40 years old,
10 or 15 pounds, you're not going to look.
Yeah. But
I was 40 pounds and it's like,
But for me,
that's
felt
what I'm saying.
Like a ton.
That's what I'm saying. I like that you
it just too much.
I had some friends in college. One of my best lessons from them was, they were really religious, returned missionaries, and I wasn't. Mm-hmm. And, so I drank and they didn't. And I says, why don't you guys drink? Why don't you? And they're like, our rule is we don't drink. We set our line. Yeah. They're like, Rick, why don't you do cocaine? Yeah. Why don't you do heroin? And I'm like, and they're like, well, you drew a line. Yeah. We just draw it further back. So, that's where your threshold is. You just have higher expectations of yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I just knew that once I crossed that line, what's going to keep me from buying a bigger wardrobe later? Yeah. And a bigger wardrobe after that, and a bigger wardrobe after that. And I was active enough, and my wife was staying active and everything. I thought, you know what? So much of what we do together. We stay active together. And And
you got to keep your end up.
Yeah. I just recognized that things were not going to end well for me.
Yeah.
If I stayed on that path.
Yeah. Well, man, like I said, I've got some other questions here. Sorry. My buddy Renz had a lot of questions for you. He loves this world, but he has, how detailed do you get with your VO2 max? I don't even know what that means,
That's something that you could really track. I mean, if you're tracking your VO2 max, you're going to be really, really into training.
Okay.
I mean, it's basically your ability to process oxygen.
Okay.
And some of that's.
So you don't worry too. I mean, you're not like.
I track it.
Oh, do you?
I do. But I mean, that's not something that's like a beginner or intermediate type of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of it is hereditary and genetics, right? I mean, you think of somebody like Lance Armstrong or Michael Phelps, their VO2 max is off the charts because they have an oversized heart or overpowered lungs and stuff like that. And so theirs might be unachievably high in comparison to yours. But I mean, I track it just because I know where I should be.
Right.
Not
somebody beginning, you don't need to get crazy about that. But at some point, it's probably good. And a lot of it's your personality, like you said. If I got into this world, I would want to know that.
Yeah.
Just because I like numbers and to see where I came from and where I end.
Yeah. And it's good to see, but it fluctuates so much.
Does it? Okay.
And I mean, it's one of those arbitrary numbers. My VO2 max versus your VO2 max, they don't necessarily translate to being the same. Okay. So if mine's higher or lower than yours, it doesn't mean I'm in better or worse shape than you most of the time. Okay. Because some of it is your genetics. Right. That, my body's ability to process oxygen and everything through my heart and lungs might be different than yours just genetically. And as hard as I work or as hard as you work, they may never be the same.
So summing up, I mean, you really just got to know your body. Yeah. It sounds like to get on this journey, he had questions about like what gear you like, what's some of the stuff you've used in the past that was just a waste. Yeah. I'm sure you have a long list of that. List, because, and then what you do use now that you like, like I said, I know it's kind of an open question,
Well, I think we've got time to cover that really quickly. I think gear-wise, I've always been a fan of, especially in hunting and stuff. It's anything you can afford to do to cut weight and have something that you like using, take it. Okay. And so I'm a little bit of a gear nut. I'll pay way more money for something that's carbon fiber over something that's aluminum.
That's a good point because every pound counts.
Yeah. And if you're on a backpacking trip doing sheep hunt in Alaska or something like that, and you've got a 30-pound pack or a 32-pound pack, halfway through that hunt, you're going, I don't need this. Right. I haven't used this thing in 3 days. Why am I packing this thing everywhere I go? Right. Yeah. Or if you're on an elk hunt or anything like that, and you've got something halfway through the hunt, you go, you know what? I should have got the carbon fiber tent, right? Yeah. Or I should have got the smaller whatever. Yeah. And so to me, it's like, do your research, buy them. And I hate saying this, but like buy the most expensive thing you can afford.
Yeah, it's usually right.
Yeah. And then buy it to last and take care of it. Yeah.
I have an uncle, that comes out to Hawaii every year with me, and they're huge hunters from Parowan, Utah. And they're cowboys, they're just good old cowboys. They don't wear, I don't even wear it, but, all the expensive camo and stuff. They wear like
KU and Sitka stuff.
Yeah. I wear like Walmart stuff and my friends get mad at me, but my uncles wear jeans and like flannel. Yeah. And every day we get up and it's a pretty good hike in, for me, again, it's like 3 or 4 miles, but that's good for me. And I get my pack on and I've got like, 4 or 5 sandwiches in there and 4 bottles of water. Yeah. And, my pack weighs 40 pounds. And my uncle has a bottle of water and a piece of jerky and a Snickers.
And his pound 20 pack.
And that's it. And that's it. That's it. And I'm like, hey, Chris, how are you not packing more stuff? And he's like, you're going to tire out way before me carrying that 40-pound pack. He's like, I can go twice as far as you with this little bit of stuff that I need with my sugar. I didn't know why. Now I know why. He has a Snickers and a jerky and a thing of water. Yeah.
Well, he knows if he's hiking, let's say you're 4 miles an hour on a hike. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty brisk pace on a 15-minute mile. It's fast. But I mean, if you're doing a 4-minute mile, you're 1 mile or 1 hour in that 4 miles. Yeah. You go out and back, that's 2 hours of hiking. Yeah. I need 300 calories.
Yeah.
That's like 3 of those mini Snickers bars.
I'm going to start doing that.
I don't need a sandwich.
Yeah. And that's it. We went and hiked the subway. This is a funny story real quick is we went and hiked the subway with my whole family and we stop at the end of the subway. Not quite at the end. You know the switchbacks. Have you done the subway hike?
You're like 11 miles down, half a mile up.
Yeah, we're on the yeah. And we get down to the bottom, and this was probably 8 years ago. And I opened up my bag, and I brought a loaf of bread. I brought a package of meat, and I had a whole thing of Oreos. And everybody around me, there was like 15 of us, and they're like, "Rick, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "You told me 12-mile hike. You know, like I'm ready for like base camp. You know." And they laugh, but. You know, just hearing you talk, it just puts those numbers into perspective where it's like, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know how many calories I need an hour.
Well, I always get a kick out of, like, I just did like a week and a half ago or whatever it was, I did rim to rim with my wife.
Yeah.
And I didn't bring my scale. I usually do to weigh my pack before and at the end to see how much extra weight did I pack that I didn't need to.
Oh, interesting.
And just see how much food did I really eat versus how much did I need.
That's a good point.
And it's always funny to me when I come back from a hunt or come back from a hike or a backpacking trip or a run. And I've got all this food.
I know where you're going.
And all this stuff. I'm like, why did I? And I weigh it. I'm like, 5 pounds. I just carried 5 pounds of crap for 50 miles I didn't need to carry.
That's a very good point.
And I'm like, I spent whatever it was, you know, $3,000 on a set of binoculars. That were half an ounce lighter than the ones for $2,000.
And I'm carrying a bottle of water.
And I'm carrying like 5 pounds of food.
Yeah. I just did a hike with my wife we were in Hawaii and did Diamond Head. And I had a backpack on, and we go up to the top and come back down, and I took 2 bottles of water. Yeah. I got to the parking lot with 2 bottles of water.
Yeah.
Didn't even have a drink.
Yeah.
And I told Gina, I'm like,
what am I doing?
What am I doing? But, you know, I've never really calculated because I'm not doing these long distances, but you get into 10, 12 miles, and that can probably get dangerous.
Well, it hurts. I mean, I'm like a fine balance for me, like Boy Scout, like be prepared, right? I never want to hit the car again on my way back. Out of food or out of water.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
But then like the speed side of me or the nutrition expert or the numbers guy is like, no, I want to run out.
Get as close
like
as
I want to
you
take
can.
my last sip 100 yards before the car.
Yeah.
I want to eat my last Snickers like 40 minutes before I hit the car. I want to do that. But I never do it.
That's good.
I don't think I've ever run out of food on a hike or a backpacking trip or a hunt or anything. Wow. Well, no, that's not true. I was on a bear hunt in Alaska, and my brothers-in-law ate all of my food. It was a 9-day hunt, and they ate all my food the very first day.
You ran out.
The very first day. We come back from hunting bear, and there's like wrappers all over the camp. I'm like, dude, what you guys do? So we ate bear meat and whatever we caught and foraged for. It was horrible.
That sounds like my older brother. We went on a hike up in Cedar Mountain, and he had this huge pack on. I mean, you know, when I'm calling him out with my loaf of bread, you know, my whole...
You worry about him.
Yeah, and I says, dude, and he says, I don't know if there's a word for it, but I have a fear of feeling hungry.
Yeah.
It's a joke, you know?
Well, and that's real, but I think if you're prepared, and this is where the training and the preparation comes in. Mm-hmm. If you've done a ton of hikes getting ready for your hunt or a ton of training runs getting ready for your race or whatever it is that you're doing, you do that, you figure out your body. You know how much you're going to drink. You know how you feel in certain weather, how you dress in certain weather, how much you eat, how much you drink, how much salt you take, all that kind of stuff. And you come up with this. So then when you're on your hunt, you're like, okay, the temperature is going to range from 30 to 45. I'm going to this elevation. I'm going to be hiking this many hours a day. Yep. I need to take this much food, this much water, this much, and this many clothes, and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And just having that confidence because you've put in the legwork. Yeah. And so then when you're on the hunt or the hike or the race or whatever it is, you're not trying anything new. I think that's where a lot of people fail. They're getting ready to go. They haven't done anything. And then the day of, they show up with a different nutrition plan.
New pair of shoes.
Yeah, new pair of shoes. Yeah. Then they get blisters on the hunt, or they're shooting a load with their gun that they haven't shot before, or they're trying some new binoculars or rangefinder that they aren't used to. Yeah. And then they ruin it.
I liked how you said,
it's just not smart.
I liked how you said, you know, train like a monster, but also train the way you're going to compete.
Yeah.
And so, why would you go hiking to train for an elk hunt with something you're not going to bring, or that you're, you know, going to change out?
You know, it's crazy. My wife and I just did, they have a lake to lake relay race down here. I mean, they do 5-person teams, or I think it's 5-person teams, 2-person teams, and 1-person ultras. And my wife and I did the ultra where we did from Gunlock Reservoir to Sand Hollow Reservoir. It's like 50 miles.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's a running race. And we had been training like hills because we're getting ready for rim to rim. Mm-hmm. And we thought, you know what? We're supposed to do like 26, 28 miles this weekend. Let's just do that race. And so we signed up, and it was totally different muscles. We'd practice running up Angel's Landing and down Angel's Landing, like repeats.
Yeah.
Like we'd do it 4 or 5 times, and it's just like, 1,200 feet up, 1,200 feet down, 1,200 feet up, 1,200 feet, and it's like 1.7 miles, just back and forth. And then we got there and it's like 25 miles. And I can honestly say in the last 6 months of training that we've done, I was more sore the day after that stupid 25-mile run on the road than on any other race or any other training run I've done, even though I've done a lot more longer runs than that.
Yeah.
Because it was different muscles.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so you want to train whatever you're capable of doing. If you're going to be going on an elk hunt and you're going to be at like 9,000 feet elevation, you're going to be going up and down hills, you need to train that way. You can't just go out and hike. Bryce Jones on Facebook and Bullet Bike Bryce on Instagram.
Okay.
So I'm not on there all the time. I'm not super active. Every once in a while I'll post some things. But
you do, I mean, is this your company or is this
so I mean, we didn't get on this, but I'm a financial advisor. I own a wealth management company, and so we do a lot of investment planning and strategy for people who are trying to manage their millions and enjoy life. Yeah. And so that's what I specialize in right now and doing for people to help them accomplish their goals and dreams and have that financial freedom.
I love it.
But I mean, they could find me. It's Lexor Wealth. LexorWealth.com is my website. You can email me at Bryce, BRYCE at Lexor Wealth if you want.
Yeah. Reach out. I mean, obviously, that's one of those things.
Happy to help.
I can see, just from talking to you, the level of dedication and stuff you put into to everything you've done.
I think you just got to find people who are willing to help you.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, when I was young, getting started, it's reaching out to people and say, hey, can I take you to lunch?
Yeah.
Can I pick your brain? Can I pass something by you? Yeah. I'm not hitting you up as an investor. I'm not trying to pitch you on anything. I want to pick your brain.
Can I have some of your time for a minute?
And now like the tables have turned a little bit to where people are like calling me when they're in their 20s or 30s and saying, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I go to lunch? Can I do this? Or what?
And you say, heck no, get out of here.
No, and like we were talking about earlier, I'm like, absolutely, let's 100%. Do this.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see, like you talked about your buddy in Vegas who got you started. It's fun to see the people here after a few years that are doing, they, like come home 5 years later, they're like, Bryce, look what I've done.
You changed
like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And then you have these other people that take you to lunch and like, that sounds too hard.
Yeah.
They don't do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, well.
Yeah. I could have stayed home, man. I didn't
like,
need to.
Thanks for lunch.
Yeah.
But it's hard because it's, when you come across somebody that's really going to do it. And it's exciting to see it. And so I'm happy to take the time and help people and show them and teach and help wherever I can.
You showed up here today. I appreciate you coming down and taking. That's what I tell all these guys. Time is it, man. You can't buy more. You can't create more.
But
so I appreciate your time.
It's fine with me. I mean, what I would be doing otherwise?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Sitting at home playing around watching TV. No.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, appreciate the conversation and.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Wow, that was amazing. That's the reason I started this podcast was to talk to individuals exactly like Bryce Jones. I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast. I did. Amazing to sit down with an individual like that and hear about people who push themselves to things that I could never imagine. Again, some of the notes of the things that you should, remember from this are tell people so that you have accountability in anything you do. It puts pressure on you to finish. He obviously isn't where he is today in business or his personal aspirations by luck. It's by the effort and not giving up. And then, all the things that we jumped into, specifically the diets, go back, take notes, the salt intake. I'm going to help me become a better, not just obviously, triathlons and stuff, probably not in my future, but hunting, hiking, anything outdoors is all things that you can, use for that. So amazing episode. Thank you, Bryce Jones, for coming out. Really appreciate it. Again, M42 Adventures Podcast. Please like, subscribe, share, follow us on social media. We really appreciate the support. Also, check out our adventures coming up, our experiences. We just had one this past week here in Utah. Absolutely amazing. Go to www.m42adventures.com. Check that out. Get on Instagram, get on Facebook, get on YouTube and watch our videos and the people who came out and experienced this first event of ours. It was life-changing for them and for us. So hope to see you down the road. Keep listening and appreciate all of you. Thank you very much.